here so it doesn't get cheese and sauce on it.
Okay. I think it's 12 or 14 years ago, I got a call from Mike Cantrell, and he wanted to meet me and have lunch or coffee or something, so we met and spent about an hour and a half probably. Got to know each other a little bit, found out we're very conservative. Mike is probably third generation oil man, and your son is fourth generation oil man in the state of Oklahoma. He's out of Ada, Oklahoma. He's been the president of the, I want to say OITC, but it's probably a different organization than that. He's been on the board of directors of many different organizations. He represents, I would say, your smaller, more traditional oil men in the state of Oklahoma. They do fracking, but it's vertical fracking. It's very different than your horizontal fracking. And the last 2 years, there's been some heated legislation, both years sponsored by leadership, Speaker of the House, Senate President Pro Tem, pushed by the big boys, and Mike and the smaller producers have fought that. It's been a tight, tough deal. They fought it and they beat that bill back both times, and I hope that Mike will explain why it was a theft issue more than anything else. It's really important. But Mike has been one of our, occasionally we have challenges, matching challenges. Mike has been very gracious to help us in those matching challenges. He's been a real supporter of OPAC, and he's a man I really do respect. And I would like for everyone to please welcome Mike Cantrell as he comes and talks to us.
Thanks, Charlie. That was a very kind introduction. I had a long friendship with Charlie, and I have to say right off the bat, when I was getting ready for this meeting, like I often do, I think about what am I going to wear? And, you know, my mama always taught me that, you know, if you're going somewhere where you really respect them, you dress up. So then I thought, but I'm going somewhere that's been built by a guy that wears bib overalls. And I don't have any bib overalls. So then I thought, well, you know what I usually wear is a Tommy Bahama shirt with shorts, like John. So I thought about that for a minute, and then Mama's word, as she died 30 years ago, but it always comes back to me, you know, show some respect. So, John, I usually look like you. This is the first time I've had on socks in a month. But you know, I want to, oh yeah, that's another reason I should have worn the shorts. Yeah, I thought this was a really upscale price for this meeting. Charlie, I was really surprised until I got here and found out they didn't have air conditioning. Now I get it. But I want to say a few words about this organization and about Charlie Meadows. You know, like Charlie said 12, 14 years ago when we got together, and I understood what Charlie Meadows is all about. And I'll be honest, I haven't always been where Charlie is politically. But as I've gotten older, I've gotten more there than I've ever been before. And this group reminds me of a scripture verse that sums up who you are and who Charlie Meadows is. Revelations 3:16, and I'll try to paraphrase, says, because you are lukewarm, you are neither hot nor cold, I spit you out of my mouth. This group is hot or cold. They're never lukewarm. And I appreciate that. Yeah, and I think that's a biblical admonition, Charlie, to be there. And, you know, I was thinking a little bit about Charlie's impact on the state, his impact on conservatism in Oklahoma. And, you know, most people give Tom Cole, Congressman Tom Cole, the credit for switching our state from a blue state to a red state. And I don't disagree with that. You know, I don't disagree with that. When you think about when it first happened, I don't disagree with that. But you look at the congressional delegation we have today, Tom Cole's the most liberal member of the delegation. Tom Cole's my congressman, and I've known him for 30 years, and I like him. We get along really well. And the best compliment I ever got, because I was a Democrat in Ada, Oklahoma, that's all if you didn't. I was principal, Charlie, for a few years. At 18, I registered Republican. And the county election board secretary, Hoot Gibson, said, "You'll never get to vote." And I said, "That's okay, I'm Republican." So about 4 years I didn't get to vote. I go back down and said, "Hoot, I want to change my registration." So anyway, I was a Democrat for a lot of years, so this was a great compliment coming from Tom Cole when he said, "Cantrell, you're more conservative than I am." And at the time, I thought that was a really big deal. Now, I don't know. But you look at the fine conservatives we have, like James Langford, Jim Inhofe, Bridenstine, Russell, you know, and I'm not sure about the others. I like them all. I like Frank Lucas and I like Tom. But when you think of the real, true, hot or cold Republicans, our delegation is more hot than it ever has been, and more principled, in my opinion, than it ever has been. And I don't give that credit to Tom Cole. I give that credit to Charlie Meadows. I'm kind of going to get out of my order of things, but since Charlie brought it up, I'm going to explain what's happened at the legislature to us, and that's what I want to talk about a bit today. 2 years ago, you know, I was relaxing a little bit. I hadn't been doing much. I've been riding the Harley around and stuff like that. And these guys from our board called me and say, "Bubba, they're about to run over us at the state capitol and nobody's doing anything about it." I said, "Well, tell me about it." So they told me the legislation, House Bill 2177. And basically what it did was expand, it was a big company bill to expand the ability to create large, you know, almost incomprehensible spacing units where they could drill from 2 miles in the same formation for 2 miles. And, you know, we all were okay with the Shale Development Act, which lets you do that in the Woodford Shale, which none of us produced vertically, wasn't producing anyway. So we were okay with that. Well, now they want to include everything in that. In other words, they want to go into the formations that we're already producing with vertical production. We found it. We leased it, we found it, we produce it. We have a contract with the mineral owners to get the resources out of the ground. They come in now and on a routine basis, go to the Oklahoma Corporation Commission and get the right to what's called force pool us. In other words, they take our rights away. They use the government to take private property rights away from us. Now that's bad enough. But when they want to extend that by double or triple, that's where we got to stop. We didn't realize what was going to happen to us because we didn't ever think they'd be drilling in our reservoirs. Why would they do that? Well, they're doing it. And they're doing it all over the state now, and it's a big deal. Now, I have to say, we're not against horizontal drilling. Horizontal drilling is really a boom to Oklahoma. We've got 2 of the best plays in the country in stack and scoop in horizontal drilling, up around Kingfisher Stack and Chickasha toward Ardmore is scoop. And they've gone into formations that are tight and that some of them are producing, but they're getting a lot bigger wells out of them, and they get it faster that way. They don't get any more reserves, they just get it faster than we do with vertical wells. And that's fine and good. We're a development state, and I get that. You know, Oklahoma is the best state in the country to do oil and gas work in if you're a big company. The best, without question. You get a 2% tax rate for 3 years on wells you drill, and that's not sunsetting, that's forever, for 3 years. You get to use force pooling, which no other state in the country has now. Imagine this, Oklahoma is almost a socialist state in regards to its oil and gas policy. Let me explain that. In Texas, I own a piece of land and on the minerals, or I have the lease on the minerals. I've got a producing well in there. In Texas, they want to come through my reservoir that I've got under contract with the mineral owner. In Texas, they have to come to me and they say, "Hey, we need to make a deal. We want to propose a well through here." And I can just say no. And they can either drill around me or they can drill through me, and when they get their money back, I'm in for my full percentage. Not a royalty percentage, my full percentage of the well. In Texas, we have the unusual ability in America to negotiate. I guess our founding fathers of Oklahoma didn't think we needed that. I guess they thought that the oil and gas industry ought to be able to do one-way negotiations. They'll just say, "This is what we want. You go to the state and get it." Now that's what we were facing already. That's already happening. They just want to expand it. So the first thing I did, I said yes. You know, when they explained to me what it was, and I said, we got the Speaker and the Pro Tem, the leaders of the House and the Senate against us. Both of them. Now that only means one thing. The big companies with 14 to 16 lobbyists among them, which we have none, and they had co-opted OIPA, which was where I was the chairman of before. We're still a majority, but they have the big companies in the executive role. So we couldn't even get them to call a board meeting. So we could reverse their policy of going along with this. When we got a board meeting, we won 34 to 19, and we had, you might remember, we reversed their policy in one meeting. So here we are, outnumbered. We didn't have anything. We hired Greg Pike. You know Greg, I know, from Ardmore, Oklahoma, to help us. And so then we got 50, 60 guys up there 5 or 6 times. I've never seen that many oil and gas producers come to the Capitol before, ever. And what I learned is it reinforced what I already thought. In politics, money often trumps merit. Constituency trumps everything. Everything. It trumps money, it trumps leadership power, it trumps merit. Constituency is what matters. So when we go to our legislators and we explain how it's a taking from us, they stand up and say to the Speaker, no, we're sorry, we voted for that first time, we're not voting for it again. So that's how we were able to stop a Speaker's bill and a Pro Tem's bill 2 years in a row. I don't ever remember seeing that happen in Oklahoma. Never. The leadership usually has such control, they just get what they do. It's a whole lot more story, but there's only one more thing germane that I want to say about that, and that is, I knew to stop this, we had to have grassroots, we had to get guys out, we had to get, do a grassroots, which I've never done. I've always had the leadership, in anything I wanted to do. I had the energy chairman of the House and Senate, the Pro Tem and the Speaker. I never thought about grassroots stuff. So it was kind of a good exercise for me, but it really reaffirmed my sense of democracy, because individuals, 1 or 2 individuals that contact their legislators like you all, 1 or 2 can change their vote, can change their position, because they do want, the only thing they really care about in life is getting reelected, most of them. So you can change their position. So I thought I've also got to have some kind of press operation. I got to put some pressure on those guys where they'll know that there's a group opposing this. And I need them to say, oh my goodness, maybe I'll look at that again. So I think, I'll share with you, it was probably, in my mind, the most brilliant political strategy I ever had, if I ever had one. And that was, I called my good friend Charlie Meadows. And I explained the whole thing to Charlie. And when I get through, Charlie says, well, Mike, you had me at subsurface eminent domain. Didn't take much to explain what a taking is to Charlie, especially on behalf of private companies instead of for a governmental purpose. That's sketchy in the first place, but for private entities. Well, anyway, I knew that when Charlie Meadows got at it in his newsletter, what he wrote, and he did, that I knew that the whole legislature would go like this. And you might not know you have that kind of stroke, but let me tell you something. This group could be the strongest political group in Oklahoma. Who won the presidential primary in Oklahoma? Somebody? Ted Cruz. Who you support, Charlie?
Cruz. Ted Cruz.
Yeah, me too. And there's a reason why our congressional delegation has gotten more conservative. There's a reason why people at the Capitol, they may be derogatory toward this group. In fact, I talked to a lobbyist this week that was telling me about how bad Paul Blair was. He's one of those right-wing crazies. And I said, you mean he's like me? Oh no, Bubba, he's worse than you. And he said, well, they caught him in a Ku Klux Klan uniform. And I said, I'm not going to use his name, but I said, come on, nobody's going to buy that. Nobody's going to buy that. That's going to backfire. This guy's going to win, and I sent him money. And I always do. When Charlie asks me, I know that when Charlie supports somebody, I don't have to worry about what they're going to do or where they're going to be on private property rights issues. And right now, that's the most important issue to me. So I appreciate this group. I appreciate Charlie's leadership. You do have a statewide impact. You have elected a congressional delegation one way or the other, maybe not directly, but certainly indirectly, and you are changing the legislature. And I'm sure you're seeing the gains more than any of us, Charlie, but there's two kinds of Republicans at the state capitol, I believe. There are Republicans that want to be with you, and there are Republicans that are too scared to run against you. So just by filing, you can influence their behavior. So the more we can get to file, the more conservatives, true conservatives, we can get to file, the better policy will move in the direction that we all think it should, faster. So, okay, the issue. I think I've kind of explained the issue pretty much, but the central points are this. Our laws in Oklahoma are the only laws in the country, probably in the world, where you can use the power of the state to take private property. Now think about that. Would anybody in this room have thought that in the state of Oklahoma, the reddest of red states, we still let companies that in every other state, the same companies have to go to us and make a deal, negotiate a business agreement between two contractual parties. Now they don't have to do that. They bypass us, go straight to the Oklahoma Corporation Commission, and yeah, we can protest. We can protest, and sometimes we win those. But you're talking about companies that have a lawyer out there every day on retainer. And the small producers in Oklahoma, a lot of them don't even know how to find the Corporation Commission. And then a lot of them just aren't going to mess with it because they think they can't win. And then there are a lot of us that will fight them all the way to the state Supreme Court, and we will. In fact, that's probably going to happen this year. So it's a private property rights issue, and that's really the simplicity of the whole thing. I really don't need to say a whole lot else about it. It kind of reminds me of that old country and western song. Do y'all remember, Jerry, you remember Jim Reeves? Anybody in here old enough to remember Jim Reeves besides me? That's what happens when two worlds collide. Well, the two worlds of vertical drilling and horizontal drilling are colliding. And it's more of an issue in Oklahoma. It's not one really anywhere else because they come in and they deal with us. You know, I had Texas, I had minerals in Texas, and they call and they say, hey, we want to drill a well here. So I get twice the benefit that I got in Oklahoma when they do the same thing because they don't have an option. In Texas, they either got to drill me a well or they got to make a deal with me or they got to go around me. So that's the way it is everywhere, and that's the way it ought to be. Those of us that believe in free enterprise and believe in private property rights, not this confiscation of them, you know, we should stand up and on all fours and complain to the hills about how this is done. And the same companies that negotiate with us in Texas, Kansas, Louisiana, North Dakota, Colorado, every other state, those same companies negotiate with us there, come here, go to the Corporation Commission and take it away from us. Now, I'm just going to fight that. I mean, I've gotten in all kinds of trouble with the bigger companies, which, you know, I spent 4 years working with Harold Hamm in Continental. I love Harold, and, you know, he's a great man. I think a lot of Harold Hamm. But they're on the other side of this issue, you know, and that's okay. My hope is that Harold and I can sit down and we can work out something that hopefully will be a catalyst for agreement, because I don't want to fight them forever. You know, we do need these horizontal wells. In fact, I'm participating in 3 of them because they came to me like a businessman. They didn't run to the Corporation Commission and try to take it from me. They came to me and said, can we make a deal? You know, here's what we want to do. Here's our geology. And here's what we think it'll do. And I said, you know, that makes sense to me. One of them, I took an override, which is a small percentage that's free and clear. On the other one, I joined. I paid my part. I lost my butt, but I paid my part on that one. So, you know, it's a great technology. At the same time we're pro-development, though, we've got to be protective of individual property rights. At the same time, it's at least equally as important, and I think more important, that we protect people's rights. The fight kind of was pictured as the little guys against the big companies. Kind of reminded me of Jerry Clowers, a story. Anybody old enough to remember Jerry Clowers? Anyway, Jerry told a story that I just love that explains kind of what we're up against as small producers in Oklahoma. He said, you know, a farmer had 3 bulls. He had a big bull, a medium bull, and a small bull. Well, these bulls weren't quite getting the job done. So he brought in another bull, a bigger bull. And so the big bull says to the medium-sized bull, well, you know, I got my 25 cows, I need every one of them. And the medium-sized bull said, I got my 15 cows and I'm not giving up any of them to another bull. And the little bull says, well, I only got 10 cows and I sure can't give any of them. So the day comes, the big bull arrives in the trailer, and man, that trailer is about to be busted down by the meanest, biggest, raunchiest primer bull you ever saw. He gets out of that trailer and he's twice as big as the biggest bull, and he's faunching at the bit. And you turn around and the two other bulls turn around, that little bull's just going down to the ground, just pawing, looking at him. And they said, what are you doing? That big bull will kill you. He said, I'm making sure that he knows I'm a bull. So that's what we're doing at state capitol. We're just making sure that the 3,000 of us that produce and live in every community in this state, we just want to make sure that we're all men too. You know, and they're not going to do it to us if we had anything to say about it. So I'd be happy to take any questions. Anybody got any questions or anything?
You keep that microphone.
The federal scene, I noticed Senator Langford, I'm sorry, has a couple of guys here, Austin, and I don't remember, Jason? Jesse. Good to have you guys. I'm glad you're here. Man, I really love James Langford and appreciate his conservative leadership. And on the federal issue, I'll say this for you guys. The biggest issue confronting us is Hillary getting elected. And the reason it is not because what you would think. You know, we don't know what Trump's going to do. Does anybody really know what Trump's going to do? I mean, he's got Harold as his energy advisor, and I feel good about that. But Hillary Clinton, the worst issue that we could ever have face us on the environmental front is RCRA reauthorization, the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, which is the hazardous waste regulation. The oil and gas industry is the only industry in America that's exempt from it because we've got low toxicity, high volume waste called the B-bill exemption. Senator Lloyd Benson from Texas did. That tells you how long it's been in place. We had to fight it in 1992. So if Hillary Clinton's elected, I look for that issue coming back, and it's life and death. We lose that one, we're done.
All right, I'll take the first question, then we'll move the microphone around. When I first started studying the Corporation Commission, I was reading about what it is, what it can do, what kind of powers it has, what's it all about. I went, wow, this is some sort of like Russian Politburo. What is this thing? It exercises amazing power. So I want you to talk to us about the Corporation Commission, and do we need it? Is it helpful or is it harmful? How do other states function without a Corporation Commission? Can we survive without it? What's it doing to us, good or bad?
Well, it's in the state. You always come back to what's good for the population. If it's not good for the population, not good for the citizens, it's not good for one industry in the long run. So I believe that. So I believe we have to ask that question. We've got thousands, millions probably of royalty owners around Oklahoma. We need to take care of it. The Corporation Commission is the place where we have to come to settle our disputes. So we do need one. Now, do we need the absolute power that they've got? Man, I think if it were my deal, I would say at least when you start drilling a mile in someone else's reservoir, you need to make a deal with them. You don't need to use the power of the state to take it from them. So we need to change that, and boy, it's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth when we try to propose that.
Now, has Dana Murphy specifically been a help or a hurt?
Well, it depends on if she's up or not. When she had an opponent, she was a little different than she was before she had one. And I like Dana a lot, and I like all three of them. All three of them I consider friends. And Dana does her best. She works very hard and does her very best to make the best decisions that she can. But she's a politician too.
I got a question on a national basis, I guess. We always hear a lot of comments about being energy independent in America. And if you look at the oil situation right now, we either have an abundance or a very low price. So are we energy independent or not? I mean, we're still importing oil from overseas every day.
Yeah. In fact, we still import 40% of our oil, and which is a great improvement from just 5 years ago. But yes, we could be North America energy independent for sure. That's Canada, us, and Mexico. We could do that. We could probably be independent as United States of America if we had some government policies, which none of us want. Like, for instance, if you had an oil import fee that kept them, see, right now the Saudis and other countries are dumping, really. And their whole reason is to force the shale producers out, because they really can't make money under $50 a barrel. And some of them are doing it, but I don't know how they're getting financed. But they've been dumping oil, basically. And in 1998, Harold and I filed a lawsuit against them. We sued Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Venezuela, and Iraq for dumping. And we lost, but the day we filed the suit, the price started back up. And they started curtailing production. They're very sensitive about that. So if we had I think Donald Trump would be more likely to do that. I'm talking way out. Nobody's going to pass an oil import fee. I mean, you know, I used to try that ever so often, and to me it's good public policy, but it's not free market, you know.
Mike, are there enough taxes and regulations that could be cut that would be the flip side of doing a tariff? Could we remove enough regulation and taxes to make it worthwhile to produce it stateside?
You know, I'm going to be honest with you. We have a bad tendency to say the sky is falling, and I guess most businesses and industries do that. The regulatory environment is not impossible, and the key thing is that we keep the states in control. States' rights, the 20th Amendment, that's all very important to us. You know, we've got to have states' rights. We've got to have states in control of their own environmental programs. Oklahoma's, in fact, my only criticism of Oklahoma and the three commissioners is, hey, wait a minute, don't give us everything we want. You know, we need to regulate this. You know, when we do these frack jobs in massive amounts, we need to make sure that we're not fracking into reservoirs that come to the ground and create pollution, which we've done in Seminole County about 5 times that I know of. So we got a responsibility to regulate, and that's a good thing. But at least they do it here with common sense, and they're proactive and pro-business. But they don't need to be, if they're too pro-business, they hurt us. Does that make sense?
Mike, one of the things that John asked a minute ago was whether or not other states had corporation commissions. I think in Texas they call it railroad commission. But do other states have something similar to what we call our corporation commission?
Yes, every state has a similar body that regulates oil and gas. Texas, they don't regulate utilities. They just regulate oil and gas, railroads, and a few other things, not utilities. And in Texas, I'm on the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers Board, the biggest association in Texas, and they're wrestling with some of these issues, and the conclusion, a few companies are wanting to pass something like forced pooling. They're never going to get it done in Texas. And the conclusion that the group came to was that it's not broke. Let's don't fix it. It works fine. You just go in and make a deal with people. Well, imagine that. Isn't that a novel idea? So yeah, all of them have it. North Dakota's got a good one. They're tough. Kansas, all of them have a regulatory body. Oklahoma is probably the friendliest of all of them, sometimes too friendly. Yes, sir.
Mike, thank you for being here with us. One comment and one question. On the regulatory environment questions you answered a while ago, I've worked in the Rocky Mountain region where the BLM has a lot to do with it, and up there it takes 2 and 3 years to get drilling permits. So that's something on the federal level that is really way out of whack, whereas here in Oklahoma you can get a drilling permit in 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. So there's a big difference on the federal level. But my question then, you've mentioned forced pooling, and some of the people here may not understand that, but if you could explain that just a little bit more, what forced pooling is, and then two, from an independent standpoint for drilling vertical wells, hasn't the forced pooling been something that helped drive and propel Oklahoma's oil industry? And so are you opposed to that on the vertical side, or just how it is with the horizontals trying to go into the vertical world?
Forced pooling is a taking no matter where it's done. Now, where it was justified in the vertical universe, I think, is we've got a lot of what they call fractionated minerals. You may have 200 or 300 mineral owners in one plot that you're trying to lease, and you can't find a third of them. Well, now that's functional, to go pool those you can't find. Well, 20 years ago, the procedure is that, okay, we're going to take that, we're going to give them like an oil and gas lease, but they're only going to get that drilling unit. They're not going to get the whole lease. They're going to get they're going to get, the royalty owner will get the highest bonus paid in the area and the highest lease percentage. They don't do that now. Somewhere along the way they've reversed that, and it's a free, I used to tell my relatives, just let yourself get pooled because you'll get the best deal. Nobody's going to get a better deal than you if you just let them pool you. That's not true. Don't let them pool you. You need to take into that, because now they can take what should be a quarter or 3/16 royalty and turn it into an eighth on you, and they will if you don't. And that's just wrong. A taking is bad enough anyway, but you need to lean over backwards to protect people's rights when you do that, I think. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
And the other thing is they don't try to find people. Used to, we'd bust our butts trying to find everybody, because under the law, you got to sign an affidavit you tried to find everybody. My cousin comes in from Illinois a few years ago as a landman. And so she, working for us, but she wanted to, work in a bigger company, so she got a job in Oklahoma City, working for a company I won't name. And she went out and started getting leases, and she's really good at getting people to sign leases. So she comes in with a fistful of leases, and they said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Well, I'm leasing these people." He said, "We don't want to lease them. We get a better deal when we pool them." Now that needs to stop. That needs to stop.
Can you explain pooling a little more clearly to the layman?
Okay. Well, we start off with all this terminology that nobody knows what it means. But, let me try to explain it. It's just the same thing as if you had a plot, if you had a 640-acre plot of land. And looking at it on the surface may be a little easier. You'll never understand how we've got it when I tell you this. But you got a 600-acre of land, and somebody wants to do something on a quarter of it that's yours. And they may have somebody that's got 2%. That happens a lot, where they go in and get 2% of what you've got. Then that gives them the right to propose a well. And if you don't want to go along, they force you to go along. That's what pooling is. They go to the Corporation Commission, file an action to pool you, and probably other people too in reality. And then they basically get to use your quarter section for what they want to do it for. And the commission will give you something. Who do you think negotiates better for you, yourself or the state? I don't want the state of Oklahoma negotiating for me. So does that explain?
So when you say pool, what you're saying is that an owner of property or mineral rights gets put into a collective with other owners in the same area so that their individual interests can be trumped by what a majority of the people they throw in the pool say. Is that correct?
That's correct. And anytime...
Now we get it.
Yeah. And anytime they... Like, for instance, what happened to me in Seminole County last year is I had an 80-acre lease. It's on, 10-acre spacing, every ton. And a company did seismic, and they decided that they could use the law of the state, and I had the only 80 acres that was productive. All around me was what we call goat pasture. It means it wouldn't produce anything. So they went in and formed a 640-acre unit, or no, I'm sorry, a 160-acre unit, sucked my 80 in, and proposed a well. I mean, I didn't want to give up anything. They didn't contribute anything to that, because they were going to drill on my lease. So I protested, and I was going to lose. To be honest, we finally made a deal, and we made the deal so tough that they never had drilled a well.
So really, it's a perfect example of the two coyotes and the sheep in a collective. The coyotes vote on who they're going to eat for dinner. I mean, it really is. The rights of the individual get subsumed by the collective, and it always hurts the individual who started out with private property and now they don't have it anymore.
You're not even the collective. It's about one company.
Right.
One company decides.
They're forcing the collective.
They're forcing the
on
collective.
someone.
That's right.
You don't even sign up for it.
My name is Jerome, and I got some property in Oklahoma County, about 500 plus acres of mineral.
Yes.
Bottom line is it more expensive, looking at it from the guy drilling the well, is it more expensive for a guy to drill a vertical hole or the wildcatter to drill horizontal drilling? Which one is the cheapest or the least expensive?
Oh, the vertical. The vertical wells.
Least expensive?
Yes. Oh, by far. A well in Oklahoma County, horizontal, and probably a 3,000-foot well would be, I don't know of many of those in Oklahoma County, but a well at that depth would probably cost $3 million. You could drill the same vertical well for less than $500,000. Yeah, so verticals, And that's the whole point. Most of these things are not economical anyway. They do it because they get to book the reserves. They're public companies. They get to book reserves on their balance sheet to drive the price of their stock up. Now, I hope there's no one here from Continental, Devon, or Newfield, but that's the truth.
Why did they drill horizontally?
Because by drilling horizontally, they get to claim all those reserves that are in that horizontal well. Whether they ever get them or not, they get to claim them. And they get to claim all the uphole zones, unless someone protests them. So they book those into their reserves. And their reserves are inflated. Now, I'm not saying some of those wells aren't really good. Some of them are really good. And they do pay off, like in several months. But I think the vast majority of them will never pay out, especially at this price.
So, Mike, one over here.
Yeah.
One question for you. And my observation of the big boys that have the nice shiny buildings and do the horizontal fracking, they pay their employees well. Their employees do very well and everything. But most of those companies, if you see their debt level, I question whether they really make money or not. When you consider their debt level, I don't know if those companies are actually profitable.
Yeah, I think you're right, Charlie. If you looked at their debt to asset ratio, it ain't good. Maybe more debt than assets. A lot of them are. So, you know, honestly, in my way of looking at it, some of them are in technical bankruptcy already. And we're going to see a lot more of that. We've seen 100 companies go bankrupt in the last year. We're going to see a lot more of that. Yes, sir.
You're inflating your balance sheet with assets that you've paid for.
That's exactly right. And the other part of that equation is some of the small bankers in the state have figured it out to say, hey, wait a minute, I've got loans with these vertical producers that have put up their reserves for assets. So my collateral just went to Hades, you know? So I think the community bankers are going to get in on this fight as well. Of course, the OBA won't because they help fund the bigger companies. So they're conflicted at least.
Okay,
but
right here.
It's something we need help from you guys. We need help from people that are principled. And there aren't too many. You know, there really aren't too many. We need to ask what's right. You know, not the way we've always done it.
Mr. Cantrell, I'm a mineral owner in Oklahoma and Texas. And I was wondering, is there a way to find out if you've been pooled?
Well, you know, under the law, they're supposed to notify you.
Under the law?
But, yeah, but like if you live in Ada, Oklahoma, they can put it in the Allen Advocate.
There you go.
Circulation of about 100.
How would you
And that's public notice. The whole thing needs to be reformed. It just does. And in Texas, they can't do it to you, so they got to find you. And they try real hard. Guess what? They find most people in Texas. Because they don't have a choice.
Yeah. My cousin lives about a mile from my grandfather's property, and on her land, they drilled a horizontal. Is that horizontal? Yeah. And they got wells and they produced wonderfully, and ours is a mile away. Our property, it was leased, but we didn't get a well. So I'm just wondering.
Well, formations are where they are, and you know, you may be completely out of the play. You may not have any. I promise you, if it's good, that someone will drill it. Because today they can identify those really good places to drill fairly accurately. So, to answer your question, this is complicated, but I'm going to say it anyway. As a mineral owner myself, you always have a dilemma when someone proposes a horizontal well through a lease that you've already got minerals that are paying you. If you've got a 40 acres of minerals out of a 640, and that is a 40-acre lease, you're getting all the minerals. You're getting all of it if you own all the minerals at 40 acres. And it's a 40-acre, you get all that. But if you join a 640, you're diminishing your interest by how many times? Over 10 times. You know, so you're, instead of having 100%, you're going to have like 0.07 or 8%. So it's always a dilemma in my head. They have to get a heck of a well to be better than 100% of the minerals. See what I'm saying? To diminish my minerals to that extent. Because I'm going to have to share with everybody else in that unit. So I always come down on the side of, I like to develop, I like to see that. But as a mineral owner, I'd rather keep what I got, I think, almost every time. If I've got something producing, I don't want somebody else coming and taking it and giving me a lot lesser percentage.
Okay, we all have a full body sweat going, so give us your best joke or parting shot and we'll call it a day.
Golly, you mean Jerry Flowers wasn't good enough?
Okay, we'll go with that.
I'll tell you the best joke is that I read a study the other day, and the George Mason University did a study, and most of you may have seen it, where they listed Oklahoma as the 8th best physically run state. That's pretty good, isn't it? That ought to get a laugh, right? I'd sure hate to see what the other 42 are like.
It's kind of like calling us the most pro-life state, too.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate being here.
Thank you all. Hey. Ron's got the latest issue here of the Oklahoma Constitution. It's got our award winners in there, and it's got the conservative index in there. It's on the table. Please sign the card for Sally Kern, grab books off the table, and leave donations.
You may now